Hello and welcome. This is Terry Roberts, and I am with DMAI, Destination Marketing Association International. And we're so glad that you are able to join us today for our empowering webinar on perception and reality and the decisions to be made when choosing a first, second, or third tier meeting destination. Before we get started, I'd certainly like to thank our webinar sponsor, which is ePro Meeting App, and we are happy to have them as our sponsor. Before I introduce our panelists, I would just like to give you some general housekeeping notes. If you're having any issues, you can type in a question in your question box, and Elaine and Joy will be happy to help you. And if you have a question for either John or Joanne as we head through our webinar today, we would love to have you type it in, and we will be happy to answer questions at the end of the webinar. So let's get started first by introducing Joanne Mims. And Joanne is the Convention and Meetings Manager of ALOA Security Professionals Association, as well as the Safe and Vault Technicians Association. And Joanne has a meeting industry background that spans 20 years, although you'd never know it from that picture, Joanne. And she has served on the Dallas CBB Advisory Board and also headed up the Association Day for the Dallas-Fort Worth Association Executive Chapter. So, Joanne, I know your duties, including site selection and contract negotiations, as well as all of the budgeting and handling all aspects of your meetings, and your largest being for over 3,000 attendees, makes you really well suited to speak with the planners on the line today about really understanding the value of what each and every type of destination brings. So, Joanne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Terry, for inviting me. I hope that I can expand a little bit, and certainly representing the planners. I'm just very proud to be here.
Great, Joanne. And her good friend, John Linen, and who she affectionately refers to, and I'm sure a few others do too, as Johnny Reno. John is with Reno Tahoe USA, and he is also an accomplished sales professional that brings almost 30 years of hospitality, sales, and leadership experience to our webinar today. And he and his team at Visit Reno Tahoe, he has led that team for almost 3 years now and has a wealth of hotel background as well. And I think John and his reputation certainly precede him, and we're so excited, John, to have you represent the CVB industry today. John, can you hear me? Well, we'll let Elaine and Joy see if we can figure out what our audio problem is, but we'll proceed and hopefully get John so that we can hear him. But let's continue and jump into this webinar topic, which I think is interesting. We had a very large number of you reserve a space for this webinar, and I think it speaks to this whole notion of planners often requesting a list from DMAI of first, second, and third tier cities, and then they're often surprised to learn that an official listing of cities doesn't really exist, that in fact there are really no specific tier qualifications for destinations. Now, there are some general characteristics which we will talk about that apply to each tier, but to some degree it becomes a degree of perception, and maybe that old saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and to some degree that's the way it is with cities. A first tier.
Yeah, I just switched over because my phone got...
Hi, John. Oh, well, he's back in there. So anyway, we know that unlike a hotel rating system, perhaps awards a 3 or a 4 or 5 star to a property based on their quality and their services and their amenities, that tier ratings aren't about the quality of the destination or the services they provide. So what we hope to accomplish here today with Joanne and John is How is a first, second, and third tier city defined? How has really stronger competition and a weaker economy blurred the lines between some of the distinctions and given you as a planner more options than ever before? And then I think John has some interesting opinions on how to put any city on your program and quote-unquote not really have to sell it, and what that can do to add true variety to your meeting destination. So John, let me start with you. How can a planner judge the distinction between destinations?
Well, that's a really good question, Terry, and I want to make sure first, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, you're perfect, John.
Okay, great. Thank you. You know, one of the things in my long years in the hotel industry, I've worked in a lot of different varieties of cities and hotels, and there is no real official rating system for tiering. Much of that sometimes is subjective and can be in the eyes of the beholder. But I think what's going to be very important for planners to understand, if there is such thing as a tier, to understand and determine what their meeting objectives are and what their stakeholders are going to be looking for, engaging from past history what's worked and what has not worked. And then assess how a destination, whether it's, if you want to call it first tier, or if it's second tier or third tier, how are those attributes of that destination going to really align with your meeting goals and objectives? Because there's so many different things that you can get from a variety of different destinations, whether it's that first, second, or third tier, that can really enhance your experiences and perhaps improve your ROI, your profitability on your meeting.
John, I think you make a great point, and it's about it not being really generic. It's about really aligning your own needs with what the destination offers. Joanne, what do you see as the value to be had by planners who really understand kind of the nuances and the differences between tiers?
Well, you know, it's more, in my eyes, about my demographic of understanding who my member is, and then being able to have a balance between pleasing the association member, but also educating and pleasing my exhibitors, because it seems that the exhibitor is the one that wants to drive everyone to the first tier city, when that city as a first tier might not really match my demographic. And then I'm constantly educating my board, who they certainly don't understand first, second, and third tier. And so it's a balance between pleasing the membership, pleasing the exhibitors, but also understanding that an association has its own bottom line, that it does come back to what is the value, to both monetary value and also value to the member.
Yeah, and that's an interesting distinction, Joanne, as an association planner, and I think it would hold true for even those who plan corporate meetings, to be able to really balance the wants and the needs of their internal stakeholders with their own budgetary concerns, and then what will attract and excite those that are attending the meeting. So, John, let's get started with talking about what really does qualify as a first-tier city.
Well, Terry, that first tier is probably the easiest thing to determine, and I think we all kind of know who those cities are. You know, a lot of it's driven by their reputation, the travel infrastructure that it takes to get there, you know, kind of that metropolitan hub. So you look at probably the Chicagos, the Orlandos, the Las Vegas, New Yorks. You know, there's probably maybe a dozen or so cities that might fall into that first tier category, and that one's easy to define.
And Joanne, what would you say are the types of meetings that in your mind are best suited to first-tier cities? Are there any kind of hard and fast rules here, or things that you want to consider or maybe even avoid as you consider taking a meeting to a first-tier city?
Well, you know, price certainly is going to be an important issue as far as the hotel sleeping room rates. Just because a particular convention might need a certain amount of square feet for its trade show, there's a fine line between, placing that trade show, in a first-tier city where the sleeping room rates might be too expensive. But I also think we need to understand about, the international member as well, because I have to look at what's my local member in their drive-in versus how hard is it for an international member to get to a city. So sometimes the first-tier city wins out by default because of possibly their airport and then their convention center size.
But again, great point, Joanne, because again, it's balancing the percentage of attendees and that will fly, that will drive, that will occur, parking rates, guest room rates. But I think first-tier cities overall have a good infrastructure to be able to allow multiple wide ranges of rates to be had inside a block. But again, it's comparing that sort of total package. So, John, then let's move to the tier of second-tier cities, and not that it falls below, but sits beside first-tier destinations. How would you then define a second-tier city?
Let's just throw out that whole concept. No, that's what this whole webinar is all about. Many cities like Reno, we work really hard to educate the planners on how our attributes are very much aligned with what you would get at a first-tier destination. And one of the things I think that's very important to assess when you're looking at those lines of delineation is, what am I really giving up? What would I be giving up by going to a so-called second-tier or third-tier city? And I think outside of that brand recognition or that first name recognition and perhaps some of the abundance of airlift, I don't think you're giving up a whole lot after that. So many other cities have so many of the attributes, whether it's restaurants, great attractions, sporting events, arts, culture. Many of those other cities have those same things. So it starts to get me back to that original concept. What is your goals and your objectives? And then how will those destinations align with that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, especially as you start to talk about art and culture and sports, and you hold perceptions, maybe generalizations. Don't you think, Joanne, that those things are to be had only in a first-tier destination? Joanne, what are some of maybe the clearer advantages that you have taken advantage of in crossing over sometimes between that first and second-tier city infrastructure?
Well, we've just been thrilled with the competition that has resulted because of the economy between the first and the second-tier cities. The value, again, the dollar value, cost of coffee, for example, can really play a big role in looking at your bottom line. And if somebody, or even, whether it be a union city or right-to-work city, but I think what happens too is that the second-tier city, I find that they are more eager to help market the convention for someone like me, and that they tend to see a greater value in. It's not that they have to market harder, but because of the stigma between first and second-tier cities, I do believe that you get that extra marketing value from the second-tier city.
Maybe that Avis, we try harder kind of delineation, but I think that's interesting, Joanne, that a planner can actually take advantage of what has been a weaker economy and where competition has increased across all cities, And you mentioned something else, Joanne, to me when we were talking about this webinar, is that you kind of have to, again, balance that who's getting to save money. Is it the association's bottom line, or is it the members, and how you weigh that?
Exactly, and I think it's so important that we keep the membership in mind. And and again, I'm speaking from my personal experience that a lot of my members are self-employed business owners, and this might be their one vacation of the year. And we hear it all the time that we've got to find a more competitive sleeping room rate for them. And so that way, I have to be very careful with my block. So I know my exhibitors are not going to have a problem staying in the higher price headquarter hotel, but I need to make sure that I satisfy both the members' budget and the corporate or exhibitors' budget.
Great point. So, John, now we move sort of to the last, but certainly not least, and I'm sure that the CVBs or the DMOs that are listening in today in third-tier cities just hate that classification of third. But, John, what does it really mean?
Well, first and foremost, you just said it. There really is no stigma. It should be no stigma attached to whether it's first, second, or third tier, because there's some outstanding quality destinations or hotels that would be considered to be in quote-unquote third tier. And from my perspective, probably the biggest delineation there is that access and how you are going to get to that destination, and what are those opportunities and to get your members there. But other than that, I don't see a whole lot, because you've got such great quality products that compete against first tiers and second tiers equally and just as well. And like we've been saying all along, if you know what your objectives are and you match it up, you can quickly assess how is that destination or hotel going to best serve you. And if you don't mind, I want to make one other comment back on what Joanne was just saying, and Terry, what you were commenting on. One of the things that's also very important as you try to figure out how this is going to fit is to make sure you're using your DMO to really help you identify what are those attributes within those tiers, if you will, to help you meet those objectives.
Absolutely. Joanne, what's your thought process there when a planner can really take advantage of, maybe going out into that third tier destination, and how across the board are DMOs helpful to you, CVBs helpful to you when you first begin to consider destination?
Well, I have experienced where they will help so much with even transportation, and again, I've mentioned their marketing expertise and even the value that they can add as far as my bottom line. And it is really, once you've experienced being a big fish in a little pond, and I know everybody probably hates that saying, but it just makes the member and the planner and everybody feel at home when they know that that city, is going to try harder and work harder to make your meeting a success. And more hotels and smaller cities are building exhibit space that satisfies the square footage that a lot of conventions and meetings have. So I am starting to see that more and more, that you'll find larger pillarless ballrooms, and so a lot of sized meetings can fit in that third tier city.
That's a great point. Joanne, I was talking to a planner a couple of months ago, and who had taken a meeting to Boulder, Colorado, and had fought really with her national board very hard to get it there, because they were very unsure about going to a little bit more remote destination like Boulder. And she told me after the meeting that her president said, "Wow, I think I know now what it feels feels like to be a citywide, because they literally took over the entire city. So it's interesting. John, let me ask you, because this is something that we talked about quite a bit, you know, how the economy factor and increased competition in the hospitality industry has really, you know, blurred these lines and given planners more options than ever before. But I'm curious what you think planners will be facing now as the economy begins to strengthen and we start to see room rates and rise and availability diminish.
Yeah, certainly the economy is turning, and we're seeing a growth back to some of the previous years just before the recession, if you will. The rates and demand in many of these cities are growing at a greater pace, and a lot of that's fueled by that business traveler. That's where we're seeing some of that bigger growth in our industry, and now the meeting side is starting to have that same level of growth. And I think that's just going to put more compression on rates and demand. We're starting to see the booking cycles elongate a little bit, and we're also hearing that some of that first-tier cities where they were being a little more flexible with what they were offering are tightening that up, and we're seeing some return back to the second and third tier city because of that. So we're poised and ready to be there to help with that budget conscious driven planner that's been able to thrive really well during this downturn, and hopefully be able to give them the same level of experience that they've been having with their previous budgets. And the other thing that's also changing is the demographics of the attendees. They're looking for more variety of experience. I think as we're getting younger folks coming to our attendees, they want more new and original experiences.
You know, John, that's such a good point. I was reading an article on a plane recently about Marriott hotels and how they were commenting that in the past their customer wanted the, I guess, brand consistency of every Marriott being like every other Marriott. They could check in, they knew what's on the room service menu, they know what restaurants will be there, they all look the same. And now Marriott, from a branding perspective, is taking a completely different sort of attack and saying each hotel needs to have its own city flavor, its own regional flavor, and have a distinctive boutique feel with unique offerings to that city. So I think I really can say that I think the industry is really moving in that way, that, you know, they want, younger demographic wants to see more variety. Joanne, what's your take on that?
Oh, yes, I totally agree with that. You know, as I mentioned, this might be the only trip that my member might take, and you know, they look at it as a true experience. And so I love it when a city embraces the local flavor, you know, even with carpet in a exhibit hall or a ballroom area. In some cities, they'll have, and I guess I can mention some cities, but like Fort Worth, for example, they have this beautiful carpet that tells a story of the Texas wildflowers and cattle drives. And so if I have a member flying from Japan to my meeting, they really do want that experience. So when I hear members saying, you know, why can't you come to this city and why won't you go to this other city, you know, where some meetings, you know, unfortunately because of their size, they are stuck with the same location year after year. But I'm blessed to have the size of meeting that I really can go to a lot of different cities and give my member a true experience.
Yeah, and I think that people more and more for their dollar are looking for a meeting experience. They're looking for something that engages them beyond the four walls of the conference. And John and I were laughing about, you know, the city will remain nameless, but that, you know, we were headed to the same city for like the 5th time in the last calendar year for various meetings. And it is, I mean, it's great for the city, don't get me wrong, but attendees sometimes kind of go, you know, I think I'm going to opt out of attending. I'm kind of tired of that, you know, and they get excited about going to someplace that they've never been before. John, I want to ask you too, and then ask Joanne to comment about how your DMO, how your CVB can really help a planner not only find the right fit, but get that unique destination feel and really open up the flavor of a city for a planner and their meeting.
Well, that's what we're all about. That's our job. Our job is to help the planner find that experience, find the resources for that experience, help with presenting everything there is about the destination. We take pride in ourselves in being the local market experts. And so if you're looking for that historical perspective, we have the ability to coordinate that. If you're looking for how you tie in some of the corporate initiatives that might be aligned with what the organization's goals and objectives are, our job is to help connect those dots. And we have a lot of resources out there to do that. We're trained to do that, and we're happy to do that. Plus, it's free.
Joanne, I had a planner tell me recently that they sort of felt that they weren't really doing their association or their company justice if they didn't use the services of a CVB because those services were already paid for, and it was sort of like leaving money on the table. How do you feel about that?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think that as a planner, you know, we need to educate ourselves about, you know, what is out there that can be, complimentary or discounted, and being able to package meetings to go to a CVB and say, listen, I'm interested in bringing multiple meetings. I have flexibility. You know, what will that give me? And you know, I've had experiences where not only was my convention booked, you know, with great value, but then I was also offered some complimentary items to bring a board meeting there, which you know, it's so valuable that then I can introduce my board to the city. Well, I wouldn't even have you know, thought about that necessarily if the CVB hadn't been, you know, helpful with wanting to offer some, and you know, free tickets to different things or a golf outing. So I really do appreciate any CVB that educates the planner on their marketing dollars and not let us leave anything on the table.
That's great. Well, let's educate the planners who are with us today. If they are interested in working and finding a destination professional, that they can certainly head to empowerMINT.com, which is the web portal of Destination Marketing Association. We're the trade show, or we are the trade association for Convention and Visitors Bureaus. So it's a great place to connect with destination experts. And if you are in or visiting the Chicago area, our Destination Showcase will be there May 8th, and you can meet face-to-face with experts representing over 50 destinations from the U.S. and beyond. And there's another opportunity to earn some CMP credits during breakouts and keynote speakers. And John, thank you again for representing our industry well. And we hope that the planners online will enjoy getting CMP credit. I know I learned a few things today. I hope you did too. You will be sent an email about 1 week after today. And in that email, you will get a link to print out a certificate. And then you will also get a link to a recording of this webinar if you wish to pass it on to any of your peers or any members of your staff. Let's take some questions if we have any. Joy or Elaine, were there any specific questions for John and Joanne?
We have a question for Joanne. So we'd like for her to share any remarkable original add-on that a CVB that she's worked with has offered.
Well, mainly, it's ranged anywhere from just, them being eager to set up an information booth close to my registration just to handle, restaurant reservations and just answer questions because I'm a visitor as well in that city. But now it's also in the future I have a board meeting that is going to be booked, as I mentioned earlier, in a city, and because we've signed some wonderful contracts with that city, then they are giving me a complimentary board meeting, which is anywhere from a $5,000 value and up, and so that was something that is new that has just happened for me, so we're very excited about that.
John, would you care to comment too on kind of some delighters that DMOs and CVBs provide, like even coordinating and handling your complete site inspection in a city?
Yeah, you know what, a lot of the CVBs do some great things in terms of how they can help you learn everything there is about the destination, whether that's that site visit. There's a lot of CVBs that will coordinate the whole gamut of that experience, including sometimes paying for it based on the qualification of that business opportunity. There's a lot of marketing things like microsites that can be developed to help promote the destination. There's e-cards on a lot of the value adds that e-postcards that destinations will provide. We have a couple of unique things that we've got out there. I know our sponsor is going to talk about convention apps. That's something that for qualified opportunities, we provide a free convention app for our planners, and Joanne's being very kind. That board meeting package, that's something also that we offer. A lot of cities are doing some great things out there to be competitive, to earn that planner's business, and to stand out. And it's really just kind of making sure you use that resource to help find those opportunities.
Great, John. Joy and Elaine, any other specific questions for Joanne or John?
Sure. There's one that asks, are there more than 3 tiers? Does it go beyond 3, or does every destination kind of fall categorically into 1, 2, or 3?
John, you want to take that one?
I personally have not heard of anything outside of the 3 tiers, and I can't think of what else that would fall, what else would fall under that. So I think the normal understanding is 3.
Yeah, I would say from an industry perspective, the first, second, and third tier cities are kind of a nuanced group, as we've discussed. Although I have heard recently about planners taking small groups and boards, very remote destinations for just, kind of that once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience. So I don't know, maybe we'll create a new category. Joy or Elaine, any other specific questions before we give Craig an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about ePro meeting apps?
No, I think we can be respectful of everyone's time and let Craig continue.
Okay, Craig, we'd love to thank you again for sponsoring our webinar. Well, Joanne and John, again, I would just really like to thank both of you. John, I think you did an excellent job of representing the Convention and Visitors Bureau industry. And John, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting in Reno, Tahoe, USA last year, and have to say, as Joanne has sort of stated, was so pleasantly, and I don't mean to say surprised, but it was just such a great meeting experience. So hopefully some of our planners will reach out to you. And Joanne, thank you very much for representing the planner position and interesting observations of how planners can take advantage of first, second, and third tier meeting destinations. So appreciate you both participating, and I'll give Craig one more chance. Craig, are you there now? Well, I am certainly sorry Craig was not able to connect with us, but you can go directly to ePro Direct online and learn more about ePro's specific meeting apps to help you with all facets of your meeting destination planning. Thank you all for participating, and have a great day.